and I was jobless, a lone parent, and as poor as it is possible to be in modern Britain without being homeless.
안녕하세요. 오늘은 역사상 가장 성공한 작가로 유명한 J.K. 롤링의 성공으로 본 실패의 중요성에 대해 이야기하고자 합니다. J.K. 롤링은 1997년부터 2007년까지 7권으로 구성된 어린이 판타지 시리즈 해리포터를 집필했습니다. 이 시리즈는 5억 부 이상 판매되었으며 최소 70개 언어로 번역되었습니다. 또한 영화와 비디오 게임을 포함한 글로벌 미디어 프랜차이즈를 탄생시킨 누가 봐도 성공한 인물이죠. 하지만 그녀의 성공이 쉽게 이루어지진 않았습니다. 그녀는 어린 시절 가난했기에 부모의 경제적인 직업을 갖길 원했지만 그녀는 그렇지 않았습니다. 그녀의 이야기 들어보시죠.
I was convinced that the only thing I wanted to do, ever, was write novels. However, my parents, both of whom came from impoverished backgrounds and neither of whom had been to college, took the view that my overactive imagination was an amusing personal quirk that would never pay a mortgage or secure a pension. I know the irony strikes with the force of a cartoon anvil now, but... So they hoped that I would take a vocational degree. I wanted to study English literature. A compromise was reached that in retrospect satisfied nobody, and I went up to study modern languages. Hardly had my parents' car rounded the corner at the end of the road than I ditched German and scuttled off down the classics corridor. I cannot remember telling my parents that I was studying classics. They might well have found out for the first time on graduation day. Now, I would like to make it clear in parenthesis that I do not blame my parents for their point of view. There is an expiry date on blaming your parents for steering you in the wrong direction. The moment you are old enough to take the wheel, responsibility lies with you. What is more, I cannot criticize my parents for hoping that I would never experience poverty. They had been poor themselves, and I have since been poor. And I quite agree with them that it is not an ennobling experience. Poverty entails fear and stress, and sometimes depression. It means 1,000 petty humiliations and hardships. Climbing out of poverty by your own efforts, that is something on which to pride yourself. But poverty itself is romanticized only by fools.
그리고 J.K. 롤링은 본인의 대학 시절의 경험을 통해 실패에 대한 본인의 생각을 이렇게 이야기합니다.
What I feared most for myself at your age was not poverty, but failure. At your age, in spite of a distinct lack of motivation at university, where I had spent far too long in the coffee bar writing stories and far too little time at lectures, I had a knack for passing examinations, and that, for years, had been the measure of success in my life and that of my peers. Now, I am not dull enough to suppose that because you are young, gifted, and well-educated, you have never known heartbreak, hardship, or heartache. Talent and intelligence never yet inoculated anyone against the caprice of the fates, and I do not for a moment suppose that everyone here has enjoyed an existence of unruffled privilege and contentment. However, the fact that you are graduating from Harvard suggests that you are not very well acquainted with failure. You might be driven by a fear of failure quite as much as a desire for success. Indeed, your conception of failure might not be too far removed from the average person's idea of success. So high have you already flown. Ultimately, we all have to decide for ourselves what constitutes failure. But the world is quite eager to give you a set of criteria if you let it.
이렇듯 J.K. 롤링은 일찍부터 글 쓰는 것을 좋아했고 작가가 되는 꿈을 가지고 있었습니다. 그녀는 출판 작가가 되겠다는 꿈이 실현되기까지 수년 동안 버텼습니다. 하지만 어머니의 죽음 등 연이어 발생하는 일들은 그녀의 꿈을 지연시키게 되었습니다. 그녀의 가장 암울했던 시기를 본인은 이렇게 얘기합니다.
So I think it fair to say that by any conventional measure, a mere 7 years after my graduation day, I had failed on an epic scale. An exceptionally short-lived marriage had imploded, and I was jobless, a lone parent, and as poor as it is possible to be in modern Britain without being homeless. The fears that my parents had had for me and that I had had for myself had both come to pass. And by every usual standard, I was the biggest failure I knew. Now, I'm not going to stand here and tell you that that period of my life was a dark one. And I had no idea that there was going to be what the press has since represented as a kind of fairy tale resolution. I had no idea then how far the tunnel extended, and for a long time, any light at the end of it was a hope rather than a reality. So why do I talk about the benefits of failure? Simply because failure meant a stripping away of the inessential. I stopped pretending to myself that I was anything other than what I was, and began to direct all my energy into finishing the only work that mattered to me. Had I really succeeded at anything else, I might never have found the determination to succeed in the one arena where I believed I truly belonged. I was set free because my greatest fear had been realized, and I was still alive, and I still had a daughter whom I adored, and I had an old typewriter and a big idea. And so rock bottom became the solid foundation on which I rebuilt my life. You might never fail on the scale I did, but some failure in life is inevitable. It is impossible to live without failing at something, unless you live so cautiously that you might as well not have lived at all, in which case you fail by default. Failure gave me an inner security that I had never attained by passing examinations. Failure taught me things about myself that I could have learned no other way. I discovered that I had a strong will and more discipline than I had suspected. I also found out that I had friends whose value was truly above the price of rubies. The knowledge that you have emerged wiser and stronger from setbacks means that you are, ever after, secure in your ability to survive. You will never truly know yourself or the strength of your relationships until both have been tested by adversity. Such knowledge is a true gift for all that it is painfully won, and it has been worth more than any qualification I ever earned. So given a time turner, I would tell my 21-year-old self that personal happiness lies in knowing that life is not a checklist of acquisition or achievement. Your qualifications, your CV, are not your life, though you will meet many people of my age and older who confuse the two. Life is difficult and complicated and beyond anyone's total control, and the humility to know that will enable you to survive its vicissitudes.
이렇듯 그녀는 인생의 실패를 통해 많은 것을 깨닫고 많은 것을 얻게 되었습니다. 이 영상을 보고 계신 이유가 지금 하는 일이 노력한 만큼 잘 안 돼서, 아님 계속 무언가에 실패해서 등의 이유라면 지금 여러분은 성공을 위한 단계를 밟아가는 과정이라고 생각하세요. 분명히 끈기와 인내는 장기적으로 보답을 받게 되어 있으니까요. 오늘 영상은 여기까지고요. 오늘의 영상이 마음에 드셨다면 구독, 좋아요, 알림 부탁드립니다. 저는 다음에 더 좋은 영상으로 찾아올게요.